Good morning, everybody. Tuesday morning drive-in. We are saved by the grace of God, not by our own works. This is what Ephesians 2 says. He says you are saved by, you're saved by grace through faith, and that is a gift. It's a free gift of God. It's not of works, because if it was of works, we would probably all boast. And so what is he saying here? He's saying in the beginning of your walk with God, there is an initial free gift of grace to pull you out of where you were at. You had no strength to get out of where you were at. You had no strength to come to God. God called you. God drew you. God beckoned you. God loved you when you were yet a sinner, is what Romans 5 says. But this is not the only operation of grace. It's not just in the beginning of your walk with God. There's a continual supply of the grace of God that is available to you and I. In James chapter 1, he said, "Be ye doers of the word and not hearers only." In the second chapter of James, he says, "I will show you my faith by what I do." He says faith without evidence or works. What he's saying is faith without action is dead being alone. So he's saying faith without activity or working out your own salvation or obedience is really a dead faith. It's not real faith at all. And Paul makes this statement, which I think is pretty cool, and I think it's easy to read past this. It's in the first chapter of Romans. I think it's the 5th verse. He says, "We have received grace and apostleship for, or as a result of, our obedience to the faith." So he's saying that God is continually supplying us with favor and power because we have chosen to respond to that initial work of grace with obedience, with faithfulness. This is something really, really important in Ephesians. I think it's, not Ephesians, Acts. I think it's the 4th chapter. It says that great grace was on that church, talking about the church of the first century. There was great grace on that church. And why did they have that grace and that favor from God? It's not just favor, but grace is really the supply of the power of God to you for you to live and walk with him while you're right here on the earth. You need his favor. You need his strength, his power. He puts strength in you. Ephesians 3, and I think it's 16, says, you've been strengthened by his power in the inner man. That is what is needed. And there's only one way to get that power with God. That power is to overcome trials and tests, to overcome even your very nature, which is corrupt. That favor is only accessible through a willingness to obey the faith, a willingness to obey the word of God. This is what we've been called into. We have not just been called to be forgiven sinners. That's just the very beginning of your walk with God. Philippians 1 and 6 says that he that hath begun a good work in you shall perform it until the day of Jesus Christ. And then if you look in where's that at? Philippians 2, he says to work out your own salvation with fear and trembling. And finally, I think it's in 1 Peter 1 or 2 Peter 1, he says, receiving the end of your faith, even the salvation of your soul. So there's a beginning, there's a middle, and there's an end. And through that process, you need the continual supply, a ready supply of the grace of God, just like your car needs gas. You need to pull over and get some gas. But with God, you just need to stay connected. If you keep your mind and your heart connected to God, like he says in John 15. Jesus said, abide in me and I in you, because you cannot bear fruit of yourself. Abide in the vine. He's saying, stay connected, stay hooked up to me, stay in the word, stay in prayer, stay in worship. And this is where you receive a continual supply of the grace of God. He said to Paul in 2 Corinthians 12, my grace is sufficient for the trial that you're going through right now. I will supply the ability. That's what grace is. It's power, it's ability, it's favor. I will supply you the ability that you don't have on your own to endure trials, to endure temptations. Don't lean on your own strength, your own discipline, your own willpower, but you have to recognize that God has called us unto a life of obedience, a life of living by the word of God. Don't be just a hearer only, but become a doer of the word. Resist those things that the word of God tells you that you need to avoid, because they are, one place it says, I can't remember where it is. He talks about abstain from fleshly lusts which war against the soul. So there's this battle. The flesh wars against the spirit, and the spirit against the flesh. That's in Galatians 5 and 17, I think. And you have this internal battle. But when you choose in your temptations to obey the word of God, guess what? You obey, he supplies grace. There's this abundant supply that comes from heaven. And oh my God, when you realize that that is available, you'll be unstoppable in your walk with God. You'll be so near to him that you'll just wonder why it was that you gave in to different things for so long a time. You gave in to temptations which might provide a temporary satisfaction, but you find out as you walk with God that the temporary satisfaction is just not as valuable. It's not as wonderful as fighting through the temptation and getting the victory on the other side, and realizing it was God that gave you the victory by his grace. God bless you. Have a great Tuesday.